The hallway of St. Mary's Hospital at 3 in the afternoon smelled of cold antiseptic and dying hope. I am William, 70 years old. My legs once waded through tons of mud to build half of this city, but now my knees were shaking like a scared child. Dr. Roberts had just walked out of the intensive care unit. He took off his mask, revealing the gaunt face of a man who has fought too many losing battles. He did not look me in the eye immediately. That was the first sign. Mr. William, his voice was gravelly and rough, like crushed stone against pavement. We did everything we could. His words hit me hard. Her liver has stopped functioning completely. The kidneys, too. I heard my own heartbeat thumping in my ears, drowning out the hum of the air conditioner. How long, doctor? Maximum 72 hours. 3 days, sir. 3 days. My world, the universe I had cultivated with such care for 50 years, suddenly shrank to just 3 rotations of the sun. Emily, my only daughter. The jewel of my life was about to fade away. I was about to collapse into the rigid plastic chairs in the hallway. But then I saw Richard. Richard, my son-in-law. Emily's husband for the last 30 years. He was standing there a few steps away from me, with his hands covering his face, and his shoulders shaking with sobs. The perfect image of the heartbroken husband. I felt a current of warmth slip into my old chest. At least she is loved, I thought. At least I am not alone in this pain. I walked toward him with my calloused hand. The hand of a bricklayer turned boss, extended to rest on his shoulder and comfort him. I was going to say, "Son, we have to be strong for her." But just as my hand was inches from his designer suit, he turned around. He did not see me. He had his phone glued to his ear and was walking fast toward a dark corner of the hallway, where the vending machine was to avoid the nurse's attention. A gut feeling told me to stop. It was not a father's intuition, but the survival instinct of an old wolf who had battled in the business world. Why would someone sobbing because his wife is dying have such a determined and cold step when turning away? I pressed myself against the recess of the wall, holding my breath. Richard's voice sounded. There were no longer stifled sobs. There were no longer tremors. His voice was fluid, sharp, and calculating, just like when he presented financial reports at board meetings. Yes, yes, the doctor already told me. There was a silence while he listened to the other end of the line. Then he laughed, a short, dry, and cynical laugh. Finally, only 3 days. As soon as I sign the death certificate, we move everything. The final investment has arrived. That phrase did not stab my heart. It stabbed my brain. The final investment. Is that what he called my daughter's death? Like the expiration date of a contract? I stood petrified. The blood in my body seemed to freeze and then boil in spurts. I felt a sudden nausea, not from sickness, but from disgust. In the last 30 years, I had seen all kinds of people. Scammers, contractors who stole materials, corrupt officials. But never had I seen a demon in such a perfect human disguise inside my own house. He continued whispering with a voice full of euphoria. Do not worry about the old man. He is devastated. He will sign anything I put in front of him to arrange his daughter's funeral. I already have the full power of attorney prepared. I stepped back, 1 step, 2 steps. The soles of my leather shoes made no noise on the shiny ceramic floor. I am a builder. I know how to move on unstable scaffolding without causing vibrations. I went back to the waiting chair and sat down. My hands gripped the armrest so hard my knuckles turned white. I must not cry. Now I could not cry. Tears would cloud my sight, and I needed to have my eyes clearer than ever in the next 72 hours. 5 minutes later, Richard returned. If Hollywood needed an actor for the role of the century's most grieving husband, they should hire my son-in-law. His eyes were red. I wondered how he did it. Or maybe he had eye drops in his pocket. His hair was a little disheveled, and his tie loosened with an artistic touch. He threw himself at me, falling to his knees and resting his head on my lap. Dad. William. It is Richard. calling me by that affectionate nickname he had used for 3 decades. I cannot live without her. Why is God so cruel? Why does he not take me instead? I looked at the crown of his head. The smell of his expensive cologne hit my nose, mixed with the stench of falsehood that only I could smell. Rage wanted to explode. I wanted to grab him by the hair, smash his head against that white wall, and scream at him that I had heard everything. I wanted to rip off that mask of hypocrisy so everyone could see the true face of the vulture waiting to eat the corpse. But I am William. I am the man who built an empire from scratch with patience. I waited 5 years to buy a plot of land at a good price. I know the value of waiting. If I unmasked him now, he would deny everything. He would say, I am old and senile, paranoid from grief. He is the one who has the papers, the ledgers, and worse, he is Emily's legal guardian while she is in a coma. He could forbid me from seeing her in her final moments. I took a deep breath, swallowing the bitter knot in my throat. I put my hand on his shoulder. My hand was heavy, but I tried to control it so it would not turn into a suffocating grip. You look tired, son, I said with a hoarse voice sounding like the concern of a week-old father. Get up. Emily would not want to see you like this. Richard looked up, staring at me with tear-filled eyes. For a split second, I saw his gaze scan my face like a scanner looking for suspicion, but I had already put on my own mask. The mask of an old widower, helpless and desperate. Dad, he said with a broken voice, rest a little. I already called the lawyer to prepare the hospital paperwork. Do not worry about anything. I will take care of everything. You just focus on being with Emily, taking care of everything. He meant taking care of my assets. Thank you, son, I replied, and I saw the muscles in his face relax a little. He believed me. He thought the prey was already in the trap. Rest a little, I repeated. I want to go in and see her for a moment, alone. Richard nodded quickly, helping me up. His kindness gave me goosebumps. Yes, Dad. Go in. I will go for some coffee. I need to be awake to arrange things. He turned around. This time I looked at his back, and I no longer saw my son-in-law. I saw an enemy. The most dangerous enemy I had ever faced because he had slept under my roof for 30 years, fed with my own blood and my money. I raised crows, and now that crow wanted to peck out my eyes to keep the nest. Emily's room was submerged in a pale and dim blue light emitted by the medical equipment. The sound of the respirator was constant. Hiss, puff, hiss, puff. The sound that maintained life, but was also a countdown. My daughter lay there painfully small among the tangle of cables. Her face, which used to have a radiant smile identical to her mother's, was now pale and gaunt. Her eyes were closed. I dragged the chair and sat next to the bed, taking her freezing hand. This hand that was once tiny and fit in the palm of my cement-filled hand was now bony, with blue veins showing. Emily, I whispered, my little girl. Tears welled up. This time they were real. The pain tore my soul apart. I was about to lose her. There were no miracles. The doctor had said so. And Richard, the one waiting for her death, had also confirmed it. I rested my head on the edge of the bed, sobbing. I cried for my daughter's short destiny. I cried for my own loneliness. But then between the sobs, Richard's voice resonated in my head. The final investment has arrived. The anger returned this time, not explosive, but cold as ice. It seeped into every cell, freezing my tears. I lifted my head and looked at Emily's motionless face. Forgive me, I whispered. Forgive me for being blind. I let you live with a demon all these years without noticing. Maybe you knew too, right, my daughter? Maybe you endured it to protect me? I looked at the heart monitor. The green waves went up and down weakly. I had 2 options. One was to spend the remaining 72 hours crying, sinking into pain, and then let Richard tear apart the legacy I built for Emily. He would take my money laugh over my daughter's grave, and use that money to support his mistresses, buy new cars, and live a king's life over his wife's. The second was to turn this pain into a weapon. I wiped my tears, a determined gesture. I looked at my hands. These hands that once bent half-inch steel rods when I was young. Now the skin was wrinkled and stained by age, but the bones were still hard. I had 3 days. 3 days. In business, 3 days are enough to bring down a corporation, enough to flip the board, enough to turn a millionaire into a beggar. I got up, leaned over, and kissed Emily's forehead. "You will not die in humiliation, daughter," I told her. But it was also an oath to myself. Does he see you as an investment? Fine. Dad is going to teach him what market risk is. I looked up at the ceiling where I believed God was watching me. Blessed be God who gave me these 3 extra days. They were not 3 days to say goodbye. They were 3 days to prepare for war. Emily would go in peace, but Richard would leave in ruin. I sat on the sofa in the corner of the room without taking my eyes off Emily, but my mind traveled to the past. To defeat the enemy, I had to remember how I let him slip into the fortress. William, never had a silver spoon. I remember my first day as a construction helper at 15. Broken shoes, empty stomach, and the sun burning my back. I mixed mortar, carried bricks, with hands bleeding from gravel cuts. The old bricklayers made fun of me. This kid is going to quit in a week, but I did not quit. I worked twice as hard as them. At night when they drank, I learned to read blueprints. I learned to calculate materials. I learned to manage people. 10 years later, I had my own construction company. 20 years later, I became the concrete king of this region. Every dollar I earned was soaked in sweat and cement dust. Calloused hands. These calloused hands are the proof of my honor. My wife died giving birth to Emily. Since then, Emily became my world. I wrapped her in cotton so she would never have to suffer the scorching sun or the strong smell of lime like her father. I sent her to private schools, to piano lessons, ballet. I wanted her to have soft white hands. And then Richard appeared. That year, Emily was 25. Richard 28, a young accountant who had just joined the auditing firm partnering with mine. He did not have the rough look of construction people like me. He was clean, polite, with well-trimmed nails. He knew how to say pretty words about art, about wine, about things I had no idea about. I remember the first time Emily brought him home to introduce him. "Dad, he loves me. He makes me laugh," she said with eyes shining with happiness. I looked at Richard. He bowed his head to greet me with just the right humility. "Mr. William, I do not have much money, but I promise I will use my whole life to take care of Emily like a princess." At that moment, what did I see? I saw a young man eager to progress, like me in my time, but more educated. I saw his kind smile. I was wrong. I judged the person by his handshake. His hand was soft, warm, without calluses. I thought it was the hand of an intellectual who would take care of my daughter. I did not imagine it was the hand of a professional pickpocket, someone who had never sweated to earn money, but only lurked to spend others' money. I trusted too much in my ability to read people in business to the point of forgetting that the most dangerous enemy does not carry a weapon, but a bouquet of roses. For 30 years, I believed in that smile. I believed when he said he wanted to help me manage the company's finances so I could rest in my old age. I believed when he took care of Emily every time she got sick with anything. Now looking back, it was all a long play, a farce that lasted 3 decades. He did not love Emily. He loved her last name and the immense fortune that came with it. Betrayal does not happen overnight. It is a poisonous plant that is sown slowly watered by my blind trust. I remember 15 years ago. Back then, the business was facing a small legal land issue. Richard, who was already the CFO of my company, walked into my office with a worried face. "Dad," he said with a convincing voice, "laws are changing. If there are lawsuits, assets in your name could be frozen. To protect the family legacy, we should transfer part of the assets to Emily's name. That is the best asset protection." He used technical terms. Risk asset dispersion tax shield. He painted a dark picture if I did not act, and a picture of absolute security if I listened to him. "Emily is your daughter. Emily's money is also your money. I just want you to rest easy," he said. And I, an old man starting to get tired of numbers, nodded. I signed the transfer of the main mansion in Highland Park to Emily. I signed the transfer of 40% of the company's shares to Emily. I let Richard be the operator of the investment funds, because Emily does not know about finance. I thought I was building a wall to protect my daughter from the storms outside. It turned out I was building a cage of solid gold, locking my daughter inside with a beast, and I myself gave the key to the beast. But the peak of my stupidity was 5 years ago. Emily and Richard had no children. That was my little girl's greatest sadness. Richard took advantage of that. He spoke to me about making a will. "We have no offspring," he said with a sad air. "If something happens to either of us, distant relatives will fight for the assets. We want to make a cross will." The content was very simple. If Emily died first, Richard inherited everything. If Richard died first, Emily inherited everything. "We are one dad." He took Emily's hand, and she nodded with teary eyes, moved by her husband's love. I accepted to be a witness to that will. I thought it was romanticism. I thought it was a lifetime commitment. Now, sitting in the darkness of the hospital room, I understand the true nature of that paper. For Richard, this marriage was not love. It was a 30-year investment contract. Invested cost, patience, acting like the model husband, serving the father-in-law, collateral, the house, the stocks, the cash, conditioned to activate liquidity, Emily's death. And today, when the doctor announced 3 days left for him, it was not bad news. It was the notice of the contract's expiration. He is preparing to collect the profits. I clenched my fists, digging my nails into my flesh until I bled. "You calculated it very well, Richard," I whispered through my teeth. "You are a good accountant. You calculated compound interest, depreciation. You calculated even the day of death of your wife." I got up, I went to the window, and I looked toward the hospital parking lot. Richard's shiny black Porsche was parked there. "But there is a variable you forgot in your equation, son." I narrowed my eyes, shining with the sharp gaze of the old alpha wolf who had just woken up. "You forgot that the one who generated this cash flow is still alive, and I have not signed the final approval." I took out my phone. It was time to make calls. Not to the priest, but to the only ones who were still loyal to me. The war begins. Darkness was gradually covering the city. The yellowish light of the street lamps entered through the room window, drawing long stripes of light on the floor that looked like prison bars. I was still sitting there staring at the cross will in my mind. But there was another piece of this puzzle that I only now had the courage to fit, a piece more painful than money. It was the voice of children. During the last 30 years, I always longed to have a grandchild to hold. I remember Sunday dinners when Emily watched my friends' grandchildren run and jump. Her eyes reflected deep sadness. "We are not ready," Dad Richard always said the first 10 years. "My career is taking off. I want to give Emily the best life before tying ourselves down with children." 10 years later, when Emily started worrying about her age, Richard changed the speech. "Emily's health is very delicate, Dad. The doctor says a pregnancy is very dangerous. I prefer not to have children than to lose my wife." At that moment, I was moved. I thought, this son-in-law loves his wife more than his lineage. I patted him on the back. I comforted him. And I even gave him more company shares to compensate for that noble sacrifice. But now, under the raw light of truth, the final investment, everything appeared in its true monstrous form. Richard did not want to have children, not because of Emily's health. He did not want to have children because a child would be the legitimate heir. If Emily had children, the assets would be divided with the child, according to the law, regardless of what the will said. His power would be divided. He would have to be a guardian. He would have to wait another 18 years to control the whole fortune. No, he wanted the monopoly. He alone. He sterilized this marriage from the beginning. He turned Emily into a dry tree that could not bear fruit, so that when that tree died, he could cut it down and sell the wood, without any sprout getting in the way. I looked at my daughter. She lived her whole life with the complex that she could not be a mother, that she was to blame. She did not know that her own husband, with whom she shared a bed, had stealthily stolen that gift from her with sweet lies, and maybe even swapped birth control pills. Damn bastard! I know! The anger no longer made me shake. It gave me a strange lucidity. The room door opened slightly. Richard entered holding 2 cups of steaming coffee. Black coffee without sugar for Dad, just how you like it. He smiled slightly, the smile of a fallen angel. Do you feel better? I took the coffee. It was hot, but not as hot as the blood in my body. Thank you, son, I said with a grave voice. I was thinking, I wish you two had had a child. By now he would be grown. He could be here holding his mother's hand. I observed him closely. A momentary stiffness in his face muscles. Very fast, just a split second. But I caught it. It was annoyance. It is God's will, Dad. He sighed, returning to his perfect acting. But I will live for the children and grandchildren we did not have to take care of our family's legacy. Legacy. He mentioned the legacy again. That is right. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. The legacy needs someone worthy to hold it. I got up. I need to go home to shower and bring some clothes. I will be back in 2 hours. Let me take you, Richard said solicitously. No. I raised my hand to stop him. Stay here with Emily. Do not leave her side for a second. I want to walk a little to clear my mind, and then I will take a cab. Richard nodded with a face of relief. He wanted me to leave. He wanted private space to call his lawyer, the bank, or that mistress expecting good news. Yes, Dad. Be careful. I will take care of her. He turned around. This time, looking at his back, I no longer saw my son-in-law. I saw an enemy, the most dangerous enemy I had ever faced, because he had slept under my shelter for 30 years. I had raised a scorpion on my chest, and now that scorpion wanted to sting me to death to keep the nest. I did not leave the hospital immediately. I went down the elevator to the basement where the staff cafeteria was. I needed a pair of eyes in the room while I was not there, eyes that were not blinded by Richard's money. I found Lucy eating a cheap ham sandwich in a corner. Lucy, 45 years old, head nurse of the night shift who had taken care of Emily for the last 6 months, while she was constantly in and out of the hospital. Lucy was not just any employee. 3 years ago, her son suffered a serious traffic accident. He needed urgent surgery, but they had no insurance. Richard, as CFO, refused to sign his salary advance. It was me, upon finding out, who quietly signed a personal check to pay for all medical expenses. I never told anyone, and Lucy never forgot. I approached her table. Lucy jumped and stood up, wiping her mouth hurriedly. Mr. William? What are you doing down here? Did something happen to Mrs. Emily? Sit down, Lucy, I indicated. I dragged a chair and sat across from her. Emily is the same, but I need to talk to you. Is it life or death? Lucy looked me in the eye. She is a woman with experience. She saw the gravity deep in my gaze. She pushed the plate aside. You say the word. I owe my son's life to you. I am listening. I leaned forward, lowering my voice as much as possible. Have you noticed anything strange in Richard's behavior? Lucy hesitated for a second. Then she nodded decisively. To be honest with you, he acts very well in front of the doctors. But when it is just us nurses, he is very cold. Yesterday, while changing the sheets, I saw he was checking a real estate catalog on his iPad while holding the Mrs. hand. He was even whistling. Whistling! I laughed bitterly. What Joy Wright? I took a deep breath. Lucy, he is waiting for Emily to die to keep everything. He said there are only 3 days left for harvest day. Lucy's jaw dropped, covering her mouth with her hand. Indignation exploded in the eyes of this single mother. Damn bastard! Damn vulture! The missus is so good. I need your help, Lucy. What do you want me to do? Kick him out of the room? Or inject him with a dose of sedative? No, I shook my head. I need you to be a spy. I need you to be in that room every time I am not. Listen to every call he makes. Check if he forces Emily to sign any paper while she is delirious. And most importantly, I took a spare key to my mansion out of my jacket pocket. When your shift ends tomorrow morning, instead of going home, I need you to go to mine. Go into my study. Take a blue folder that is at the bottom of the safe, and put this in Richard's study. I handed her a tiny recorder, the kind I used to record business ideas in my day. Do you want to record him? I want proof, Lucy. He will call his lawyer his accomplices. He will get confident when he is alone at home. I need his voice. Lucy squeezed the recorder in her hand, the rough hand of a worker wielding the weapon of justice. Mr. William, she said firmly, you saved my son from death. I will not let that vulture touch a hair of Mrs. Emily. I swear to God. We looked at each other, an alliance forged between a millionaire boss and a poor nurse, united by loyalty and hatred toward the hospital room. Be careful, Lucy. He is very cunning. Do not worry, sir. I am a nurse. I know how to move softly and give painful injections without the patient noticing. Leaving the hospital, I did not go home. I took a taxi to the historic center where old colonial buildings lay in silence under the shade of trees. I stopped in front of a small law office with a tarnished bronze plaque. Frank Miller, attorney. Frank was my high school classmate. Unlike the Armani-suited lawyers from big firms that Richard used to hire, Frank was an old-fashioned man. He still used a typewriter, wore baggy suits bought in the 90s, and most importantly, he had never accepted dirty money. Precisely because of that integrity and conservatism, Frank was not rich, but he was the only one I could trust with my life right now. I needed someone uncontaminated. I knocked on the door. It was 10 at night. Frank opened with his reading glasses slipped down his nose and a thick law book in his hand. William, what are you doing here at this hour? Is Emily not? He stopped seeing my face. Let me in, Frank. I need a lawyer. Right now. 5 minutes later, in a room full of the smell of old paper and tobacco, I told Frank everything. From the phrase in the hallway, the 3-day plan, to Richard's true face. Frank listened without interrupting. He lit a cigarette. The smoke floated like tangled thoughts. When I finished, he hit the table, hard raising dust. Damn brat. I had long suspected the way he looked at financial reports more than his wife, but I did not dare say anything for fear you would get angry. Now is not the time to say I told you so, Frank. I need to know legally where I stand. Frank put out the cigarette and took out a notepad. You are in a very weak position, William. The cross will from 5 years ago is legal. The guardianship power is also legal. If Emily dies tomorrow by law, Richard inherits 100% of the common assets and most of her own assets. Is there any other way? There is only one way. A new will. Frank looked me straight in the eyes. Emily must sign a new will revoking all previous ones. But the problem is she lucid enough to sign? If she signs in a state of delirium, Richard will allege the will is invalid. She has moments of lucidity, Frank. Very brief. But she has them. Then we need to have the document ready. It only takes a signature. And 2 independent witnesses. You and Lucy, for example. At the exact moment she opens her eyes, we have to act. But is there anything else? I hesitated. This was my trump card. Frank, do you remember the land in the south of the city? That swamp I bought 30 years ago? Frank narrowed his eyes. That place where the devil lost his poncho that you bought to raise ducks and failed? The swamp? Exactly. Richard knows about it. He always calls it William's stupidest mistake. He never bothered to include it in the company's asset portfolio because he thought it was worthless. He did not even bother paying the property tax. I continue paying it with my personal money. I smiled. A cold smile. But the original deeds, the public deed, are still in an old box I keep. And most importantly, I bought it in Emily's name before she got married. Frank's eyes lit up. He is a lawyer. He understood the point immediately. Asset acquired before marriage. If there is no marital society agreement, it is separate property. Exactly. And Richard despises it so much he forgot its existence in legal documents. He thinks it is trash. William. Frank leaned forward. Do you know what is in that area now? I know. but I need you to confirm the exact figure. Frank grabbed the phone and called an acquaintance in urban development, not caring about the time. While Frank searched for the information, I leaned back in the old leather armchair and closed my eyes. Memories took me 30 years back. Back then, I had just started to succeed. An old farmer begged me to buy 50 acres of wetlands on the outskirts of the city. No one wanted to buy that, salty water weeds growing taller than a person. But I, with a builder's eye, saw its location was right on the axis of the highway they planned to expand toward the port. I bought it at a bargain price, considering it charity for the old man. I gave it to Emily on her 18th birthday. "This is for your future," I told her. Emily pouted at that moment. "You are giving me a swamp, Dad?" Later, when Richard married Emily, he examined that land. He hired an appraiser, a drinking buddy of his, to see it. The appraiser ruled. Rehabilitating this land would cost a fortune. No one would buy it. Better leave it lying there. Richard made fun of me at a family dinner. "Dad, sometimes the old generation's vision also fails. That land is a liability, not an asset." I stayed silent. I did not argue. I knew something he did not. Urban planning changes in 20-year cycles, and I am patient. I kept the deeds in an old tin box, a cookie tin my wife liked a lot. I kept it at the bottom of the safe in the old house, and when we moved to the mansion, I took it with me, but threw it in a corner of the storage room where I kept worthless memories. Richard is greedy for fame. He only cares about what shines. Stocks, mansions, downtown cars, gold. He would never rummage through the dusty storage room, keeping old photo albums and Emily's childhood toys. That was his mortal mistake. Arrogance. "William," Frank's voice brought me back to reality. Frank was looking at the computer screen with a pale face and shaking hands, holding a paper note. Do you know the latest news about the expansion project for the tech gigafactory?" "I heard rumors," I replied calmly. "Your swampland?" Frank swallowed hard. "It is right in the middle of the planning for the new Supplier Industrial Park. Right in the middle. The heart of the project." Frank turned the screen for me to see. The satellite map appeared. The area that used to be a swamp was now colored deep red. The signal for high-value industrial commercial land. The new highway passed right by the edge of the land. The current market value? Frank's voice broke with emotion. "With this prime location, corporations are buying at top dollar per square foot." I did the mental calculation. 50 acres. Roughly 200,000 square meters. $45 million? Frank stammered. "No subtracting land use change costs? Taxes, discounts? The most conservative figure is..." He wrote a number on the paper and pushed it toward me. $10 million. $10 million. An immense fortune even for the upper class. I looked at that number. It was not just money. It was the executioner's sword. What was Richard coveting? He was aiming for the mansion valued at $2 million. He was aiming for the company's shares that were downvalued at maybe $1 million more. In total, he thought he would walk away with $3 or $4 million. He was killing his wife for $4 million. Meanwhile, he had ignored, despised, and mocked a treasure of $10 million that was right under his nose. This irony was bitter and sweet at the same time. "The trash turned into gold," Richard I said quietly. "You despise this as trash. Then you do not deserve to touch the gold." "Frank." I got up with eyes breathing fire. "Draft the will immediately. Content. Emily leaves all her separate assets, including this land, to the Emily Foundation, a charity managed by me. Richard receives not a penny. And the part of the joint marital assets? Leave him the minimum part the law marks. The house, the car, those things he wants so much. Let him think he won, but note clearly, he will only receive it if Emily dies without disputes. What do you plan to do? I will use these 10 million as bait, but first I need proof of his adultery or fraud to disinherit him completely if necessary. But most importantly, I want to see his face when he knows what he lost." Frank nodded, and his fingers began to type frantically on the typewriter. Clack, clack, clack. The sound of the typewriter resonated in the night like loading a gun. I looked out the window toward the hospital in the distance. Wait, daughter, Dad is bringing you the weapon. The first day was about to end. I had 48 hours left. And Richard, the exemplary son-in-law, was still dreaming of vacations in the Caribbean with the money from his wife's sale. He did not know he was standing on a $10 million mine, and I had the detonator. 6 in the morning of the second day, 48 hours left. The dawn rose through the fog, gray and cold. I was standing in the hospital lobby with a cup of already cold coffee in my hand and my eyes glued to the entrance door. Lucy appeared. She had just finished her night shift. She looked haggard, but her eyes shone with unusual determination. She did not head to the bus stop like every day. She went straight to the parking lot where I had discreetly given her the keys to my old truck, the one Richard never deigned to look at. Lucy's mission was simple, but extremely dangerous. Infiltrate the Wolf's Mouth. I had given her the key to the service door of the mansion. At this hour, the domestic staff had not arrived yet. Richard was still at the hospital, with me playing the role of the exemplary husband, falling asleep next to his wife's bed. "Be careful, Lucy," I murmured, although she could not hear me. "Just put it in the right place." My plan relied on a deep-rooted habit of Richard's. He was obsessed with privacy. He had a soundproof study on the second floor, which he called his sanctuary. He strictly forbade the staff from entering to clean if he was not there. But he did not know that I, who built that house, knew a technical gap in the electrical installation, hidden behind the bookcase, where you could hide even a shoebox without anyone noticing. I returned to the room. Richard was stretching, pretending to yawn with exaggerated tiredness. "Good morning, Dad," he said with a hoarse voice. The night was long. "Could you sleep at all?" "No," I replied. "My tiredness was also real. I am old. My bones hurt. I need to go home for my medicines and some of Emily's insurance papers." Richard frowned. "Are you going alone, or do you want me to take you?" This was the decisive moment. I needed him to go home, but I needed him to go alone, so he would feel free to show his true nature. "No." I waved my hand, coughing a couple of times. "I do not want to leave her alone right now, but—" "Richard, you go. Go shower, change clothes, and bring me the insurance folder that is in the safe in my study. I forgot the combination. I will text it to you in a moment." Richard's eyes lit up. I saw it clearly. Have access to my safe? That was his dream. "Yes, you are right, Dad." He got up immediately, adjusting his tie. "I also need to change. I stink. Emily would not like it. I will go fast and be back right away." He grabbed his Porsche keys. He did not know he was running straight into the trap. I sent a message to Lucy. "He is on his way. You have 15 minutes. Get out of there now." 3 minutes later, Lucy replied, "Ready. The recorder is in the electrical gap, in voice-activated recording mode. I already took the old folder with the deeds you asked for." I sighed, relieved, letting myself fall into the chair. My heart beat like a war drum. Richard would arrive home. He would see himself in his safest space. He would think that I, the senile old man, was starting to cede control. By giving him access to the safe, he would make calls. Surely he would call to brag about his victory. And that little recorder, silent behind the thick law books, would be the mute witness to his crimes. 12 noon. Richard returned to the hospital, smelling of expensive perfume, and with a much fresher countenance. He handed me the insurance folder where I had purposely left unimportant papers. I already checked everything. "It seems everything is in order, Dad," he said. "Thank you, son. I took it. Now stay here. I will go eat something with the lawyer Frank. He wants to discuss some paperwork." Richard suspected nothing. He even encouraged me. "Yes, Dad, go. Frank is very careful. Let him handle it." I met Lucy in a discreet cafeteria 2 blocks from the hospital. She handed me the black Sony recorder. Her hands were shaking. "Mr. William?" she whispered with a pale face. "I heard a snippet on the way. It is. It is more horrible than we thought." I took the device. It felt freezing in my hand. I put on the headphones and pressed play. Static noise. footsteps on wooden floor, the sound of liquor being poured, and then Richard's voice resonated clear and crisp without a trace of the tremor or sadness he showed at the hospital. He was talking on the phone, on speaker. "Hello, my love. Yes, I am home." The old man is still at the hospital crying like a child. A woman's giggle was heard on the other end of the line. My blood boiled. "How is everything going?" "When is the matter over?" the mistress asked. "The doctor says maximum 48 more hours. The liver has already collapsed." "Poor Emily," he said with a sarcastic tone. "She is the perfect wife, you know. Obedient. Signs everything without asking. And most importantly, she dies just in time." I closed my eyes. I felt as if someone stabbed a knife in my heart and twisted it. Perfect wife, because she dies on time. He continued, "This morning the old man asked me to open the safe. I took a look at the asset inventory. It is a gold mine, stocks cash, and this mansion. Right after the funeral, I will put the old man in a luxury nursing home. He won't live long when his daughter dies. After that, everything will be ours." "And what about that land on the outskirts you told me about?" the other one asked. Richard let out a laugh. The laugh echoed in the study, and now it rumbled in my ears like thunder. "Ah, that swamp." "The swamp?" "Trash. I will sell it cheap to some duck farmers to get quick cash and buy you your new car. Do not worry. I am not as stupid as the old man. I know how to differentiate an asset from a liability. My 30 years of investment are about to bear fruit." I turned off the recorder. I could not listen any more. Enough. It was more than enough. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but they were not of sadness. They were tears of liberation. I had tormented myself thinking if I was too suspicious, if I was turning my pain into paranoia. But now this recorder was the death sentence for my conscience. I was no longer his father-in-law. I was his executioner. "Thank you, Lucy," I said with a terrifying calm. "You have saved my family once again." I put the device in the inner pocket of my jacket, right over the left side of my chest. It burned like an ember, incinerating any trace of mercy left in me. Now let's go back to the hospital. The show is about to end. 3 in the morning of the third day. 24 hours left. The hospital was plunged into deadly silence. Only the rhythmic beep-beep of the monitor was heard. Richard had fallen asleep on the corner sofa, snoring softly. He was exhausted from acting all day. Frank, who had sneaked in through the medical staff service door, thanks to Lucy and I, were by the bed. Emily moved. Dr. Roberts had told me about the phenomenon of terminal lucidity, that brief moment when a dying person suddenly regains consciousness, like a candle that flares up before going out. I had prayed for this moment. Emily's eyes opened halfway. Those big brown eyes, once lively, now cloudy, but they focused. She saw me. "Dad?" The whisper was as slight as a sigh. I squeezed her hand. "Here I am, daughter. Here I am." Richard continued snoring. He was so confident he despised his wife's life and death so much that he slept soundly. I hurt. "I know. I know." I stroked her hair, crying without consolation. "Emily, listen to me. We do not have much time." "Richard, he is not who you think." Emily blinked. A tear rolled from the corner of her eye, and then she said something that left me frozen, a phrase that proved my daughter was not stupid, just resigned. "I know, Dad. I know." I stood stupefied. "You know? I know he has another woman. For a long time," Emily said with difficulty, word for word. "But I was afraid of loneliness. I was afraid of disappointing you, for having a failed marriage. Forgive me." My God, my little girl had endured betrayal in silence all these years, just for fear of saddening me. What pressure had I put on her? Had I built such a perfect image that my daughter dared not admit her failure? "No, my silly girl, I am to blame. I let the wolf into the house," I said with a broken voice. "But now I am going to kick him out. Do you want that? Do you want to protect what is yours so it does not fall into his hands and that woman's? Emily looked at me, and then she looked at Richard sleeping. In her eyes there was no longer love, only tiredness, and a little late contempt. Free me, Dad. Do not let him laugh over my grave. I nodded, signaling Frank. He gently placed the folder on the side table and brought it closer to Emily's hand. Emily said, Frank, quietly, this is a new will. You leave all your separate assets, including the $10 million land, to a charity foundation. Richard will have no decision power. Do you agree? I agree. I helped her sit up a little. Lucy held the paper. Emily's hand shook, holding the pen. She was weak, but all her will was concentrated on the tip of that pen. Emily Miller. The signature came out scrawled crooked, not as pretty as her handwriting from before, but it was the most beautiful and powerful signature I had ever seen. It was the signature of freedom. Just as she finished the last stroke, Emily dropped the pen on the sheets. She exhaled as if a weight of 1,000 tons had been lifted off her. Protect everything, Dad, she whispered and fell back into the coma. Frank quickly withdrew the document and signed as a witness. Lucy also signed, and I signed. 3 signatures surrounding Emily's like a circle of protection. Frank put the folder in his briefcase, nodded, and disappeared silently into the darkness like a ghost. I laid Emily back down and kissed her forehead. Rest, daughter. You did very well. Now let Dad take care of the rest. I went back to my chair, looking at Richard, who kept snoring. Sleep, dear son-in-law. Enjoy the last quiet sleep of your life, because when you wake up, the gates of hell will open. 9 in the morning of the 4th day, the last day. The atmosphere in the room was tense as a violin string. Emily's vital signs were decreasing. Dr. Roberts said only a few hours remained. Richard had already woken up. He showered in the hospital bathroom and groomed himself impeccably. He was preparing for the most important role of his life, the grieving widower. I was by the window looking at the city. Richard, I called without turning. Yes, Dad. This afternoon, right after everything ends, I want to talk to you about the future. Richard paused a moment, and then his voice could not hide the glee. Yes. Of course, Dad. We have to talk about the funeral, and also about the asset administration. You relax. I already have a plan. No. I turned around, looking him straight in the eyes. My look was no longer that of a hurt old man. It was cold and direct, and not about the funeral. I want to talk about the inheritance. Richard jumped a little at that look, but greed blinded him. He thought I wanted to yield power to him. Yes, the inheritance. Do you mean... I called the lawyer, Frank. He will come here at 2 in the afternoon. I want everything to be clear before she takes her last breath. I want her to leave knowing her assets remain in the right hands. Dad, do you plan to make the will right now? He asked, trying to hide his impatience. Yes. I am tired, Richard. 70 years old and about to lose my daughter. I no longer want to carry this company. I want to rest. Richard approached and put his hand on my shoulder. This time I did not reject it. I let him touch me so he would feel victory was within his reach. I understand you, Dad. I will carry the weight for you. I will make this empire bigger to honor Emily. Very well, I said. Then call your secretary. Tell her to prepare the financial reports, and make sure to put on your best suit. This is a solemn ceremony. He nodded frantically and asked for permission to go out to call. I knew who he was calling. He was calling his personal lawyer to prepare to keep everything. He was calling his mistress to give her the good news. The old man surrendered. I watched his shadow walk away, thinking to myself, Dress well, son. People usually dress in their best finery to attend their own funeral. 2 in the afternoon. Emily was still there. Her weak breathing was just small ripples on the monitor. But she waited. She waited to see justice done. The spacious VIP room had transformed into a makeshift boardroom. Frank was sitting in a corner next to a thick pile of files. Lucy was at the door, arms crossed, face impassive like a divine guardian. Richard entered. He wore a black Armani custom-made suit, ash-gray silk tie. He looked like a powerful CEO radiating the confidence of a winner. He saw Frank. He nodded with a protocol greeting and went straight to Emily's bed. He took her hand and kissed it gently. "My love, here I am," he said with a trembling and emotional voice. "Dad and I are fixing our future." I was sitting in the armchair opposite, playing with my old pocket watch, an inseparable object since my beginnings. "Sit down, Richard," I ordered. My voice was not loud, but it had the authority of an irrefutable command. Richard sat in the chair in front of me. Between us was the small table where the watch went tick-tock, tick-tock. Lawyer Frank already commented to me about the financial situation. He started wanting to take the initiative. I think we should transfer executive power immediately to avoid market fluctuations when the news about Emily gets out. I did not answer. I just stared at him. The silence lasted a minute, 2 minutes. Richard started getting restless. He adjusted his tie. He looked at Frank, but Frank only looked at his papers. "Dad!" he called with a tone starting to show nervousness. I hit the watch against the table. Clack! "Richard," I said with a deep and resonant voice, "when one is about to lose their only daughter, time passes strangely. A second is long, like a year, and in those eternal seconds one starts thinking about the past. Yes, I understand your pain." "No, you do not understand," I interrupted him, changing the deal abruptly. "From son to you. From son to you," with coldness. "I'm asking myself a question, and I need you to answer me with the truth. Just this once." Richard went rigid. The plastic smile on his lips faded. I leaned forward, looking deep into his eyes, as if I wanted to drag the demon inside him into the light. "Why do you call me Dad, Richard? During these 30 years, is it because you see me as a father, or because you see me as an ATM?" The air in the room froze. The sound of Emily's respirator sounded like a bomb countdown. Richard let out a forced laugh. Sweat started beading on his forehead. "What joke is this, Dad?" "Of course it is, because I love you. I love Emily." "You love Emily?" I repeated with sarcasm. "You love her so much you sterilized her, so you would not have to share the inheritance with children? You love her so much you wait for her to die to go on vacation with your whore?" Richard jumped from the chair, face red with anger. "What are you saying? Are you crazy? Grief made you lose your mind. I'm not going to stay here listening to these insults." He tried to turn around to leave. "Sit down!" I shouted. The shout rumbled, making even Lucy and Frank jump. It was the roar of the old lion defending his territory. "I have not given you permission to leave, and you will not want to walk out that door without hearing this first." I took out the black Sony recorder from my jacket pocket. Richard's face drained of blood. He recognized it. He recognized that jet black. He recognized the way I held it as if it were a loaded gun. "Sit down, son-in-law," I said, regaining a terrifying calm, "and listen to yourself. Let's see how the tone of a perfect husband sounds." My thumb pressed the play button, and the final judgment began. The space in the room seemed to run out of air. Only the scratchy sound coming out of the small Sony recorder speaker remained, but for Richard surely it sounded like thunder exploding in his ear. Click, his voice resonated, strong, naked, stripped of all the shiny facade of his Armani suit. "She is the perfect wife, you know. Obedient, signs everything without asking, and most importantly, she dies just in time." Richard stayed petrified in the chair. His face went from furious red to pale white, and then to ash gray. His eyes opened wide, pupils contracted by terror. He stared at the recorder as if it were a poisonous snake that had just come out of my pocket. The tape kept running. The old man won't live long when his daughter dies. After that, everything will be ours. My 30 years of investment are about to bear fruit. I turned off the device. Clack! The room fell into a frightful silence, only the weak beep-beep of Emily's heart monitor, as a reminder that the victim of those words lay right there. Richard swallowed dry. He tried to move, but his limbs seemed paralyzed. He looked at me, then at Frank, then at Lucy. No one said a word. Everyone looked at him with absolute contempt. "That!" stammered Richard. His voice cracked, shaking uncontrollably. "That is not my voice. It is not." He jumped up, knocking the chair back. He pointed at the recorder, trying to cling to the most modern excuse he could think of. "It is fake. Now artificial intelligence can fake voices. Dad, someone is tricking you. Someone wants to separate us." I never said those things. I stayed seated, holding the recorder firmly. I watched him kicking like a fish out of water. "Yeah?" I smiled with disdain. "Richard, you are a good accountant, but you are a lousy actor when you are cornered." I swear he screamed, sweat bathing his forehead. "I love Emily. I have dedicated 30 years of my life here." "Why would I say that?" I got up, slowly approaching his face. I am older than him, a little shorter, but in that moment, my shadow covered him like a mountain. I pointed toward the bed where Emily lay unconscious. "Look at her, Richard. Look at your wife." He did not dare turn his head. "You say it is fake? Then look me in the eye and repeat that phrase," I growled. 30 years, Richard. 30 years calling me Dad, calling her my love. But never, not once did your gaze reach the bottom of my eyes. You only looked at my wallet." "Dad! Do not call me Dad!" I shouted, making him jump from fright. "You calculated everything? Asset depreciation opportunity, cost break-even point. Did you see my daughter's life as a business project? And now that the project ends, you want to collect the profits, right?" Richard backed away, bumping into the edge of the table. He realized the feigned filial affection had broken completely. He could no longer use emotional blackmail. His face began to transform. Fear gave way to his true nature, cruelty and greed. He adjusted his shirt collar and straightened up. If he could not play the good son, he would play the ruthless partner. "Fine," he hissed, changing his tone, totally cold and sharp. "You want to play cards on the table? Fine. You have that trash tape. So what? In court, I will prove it is illegal. And the papers? I am the legal husband. I have the power of attorney. I am the sole guardian." He turned to Frank, smiling with cynicism. "Frank, you are a lawyer. You know the law. The cross will from 5 years ago is notarized. The asset administration power is still valid. Even if this old man hates me, he cannot change the fact that I am the sole heir. He believed he had won on legal ground. He thought he had lost in affection, but the law would protect him." Richard took out his phone, sliding his finger quickly across the screen. "I have messages from Emily." He held up the phone, triumphant. 3 days ago, she sent me a message confirming she gave me full decision power over the company's shares. This is proof of her will when she was lucid. I looked at him, feeling pity for his stupidity. He still thought Emily was the inert doll of the last 30 years. Frank sighed, taking off his glasses to clean them. He opened his briefcase and took out a document with the ink barely dry and bright red seals. "Richard," said Frank, with a monotone voice, as if reading a sentence you forget something basic in law. "Text messages do not have the value of a notarized document, and more importantly, all powers can be revoked." "Revoked?" Richard let out a mocking laugh. "Who revokes them?" "She is in a coma. She woke up," said Frank. At 3:15 this morning, Richard's smile erased. Frank slid the paper toward Richard. "This is the Power of Revocation Act and the new will. Drafted at 3:30 this morning. It has Emily Miller's signature, my signature as a witness, and Mrs. Lucy's signature present here." Richard snatched the paper. He read it greedily. His eyes moved frantically. "I, Emily Miller, revoke all powers of my husband Richard. I disinherit him." "Impossible!" he shouted, crumpling the paper in his hand. "I was here. I was sleeping right there. They tricked me. They took her hand to sign while she was delirious. This will is void. You can sue if you want," Frank replied calmly. "But we have video of the whole signing process. The video clearly shows Emily totally lucid, clearly answering questions about her identity and will. And most importantly, Frank pointed to the last line of the will. Emily clearly specified the reason for disinheriting you for adulterous conduct and violation of the husband's marital obligations. And Mr. Williams' tape will be complimentary proof in court to reinforce that cause. Richard dropped the paper to the floor. He staggered. 2 legal pincers had trapped him. The new will blocked the money, and the recording blocked the lawsuit. But, he tried to cling to the last hope, the marital assets. 30 years of living together. I have a right to 50% of the assets formed during the marriage. This house the company shares are common property. He turned to me, eyes bloodshot. You cannot kick me out empty-handed. The law protects me. I will take half, $4 million. That is the effort of my 30 years. I nodded. Yes, you are right. According to the law, you can dispute the part of the common assets. The house, the car, and that pile of stocks that are devaluing. Richard exhaled. He could still save something. $4 million was still a big figure. He started recalculating in his mind. Fine. $4 million is enough to start over. Then let's divide, he growled. Let's divide, right now. And I will leave? I smiled. The smile of someone who has an ace up his sleeve. Fine. I will give you the house. I will give you that pile of stocks. But Richard, you have been too busy counting coins, and you forgot the real treasure. I walked to the window, looking toward the distance of the city. Do you remember your first year as a son-in-law? I asked softly. You went to see a piece of land in the south of the city. That swamp. Richard frowned. He was extremely tense. He did not understand why I brought up that old topic. That dump? He said with contempt. You still have it. Surely it is full of mosquitoes and rats. You told me to sell it. You said it was a liability. You, with your masters in finance, valued it at 0. Well, it is a 0. Flooded, salty land. Who is going to want that? I turned around and took out a large urban planning map from Frank's briefcase, unfolding it on the table. Bright red lines ran from one side of the map to the other. Come here, financial expert. Come see my liability. Richard approached reluctantly. He looked at the map. This is... He narrowed his eyes. The new tech gigafactory industrial park, the federal highway. Correct? I put my finger on the lot that was proudly in the center-colored golden yellow. And here. This is your swamp full of mosquitoes. Richard's eyes opened to the maximum. He was a businessman. He understood the meaning of that location. He understood the meaning of those colors on the plan. Is it inside the planning? His voice was a thread. Frank. Appraise it for him, I ordered. Frank adjusted his glasses. According to the current compensation price for this area. Surface of 50 acres. 10 million, Richard stammered. His jaw dropped. $10 million. I emphasized every word. 6 times more than the total assets you have been fighting for these 30 years. Richard stood petrified. The number 10 million danced before his eyes. It was the figure of freedom, of power, of royalty. And he had forgotten it. But suddenly he pounced, eyes shining because greed resurfaced, stronger than ever. But they are Emily's assets. I am her husband. Even if there is a will, I have the right to dispute the gains on capital appreciation. Wrong? I shook my head. A cruel denial. I bought it for Emily when she was 18, before she married you. It is separate property. And in the last 30 years, you never put a penny to improve it. You did not even deign to pay the property tax. You renounced your rights with your contempt. I hit the new will with my hand. And in this paper, Emily donated the full 50 acres to the Charity Foundation. Not to me, not to relatives, but to poor children. 10 million you will never touch. I whispered in his ear. This blow was stronger than any physical blow. Richard collapsed. He fell to his knees on the floor. He did not hurt for his wife. He hurt for the money. He hurt having sold himself for 30 years at a cheap price. He realized he had just thrown a winning lottery ticket out the window, just because he thought it was wet paper. The irony of fate, or rather the punishment for pride, had crushed him. Richard was kneeling on the cold floor. His Armani suit now looked wrinkled and pathetic. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. This time they were real tears. Tears of a loser who was left with nothing. "Dad," he moaned, returning to use the old nickname with desperation. "Do not do this. It is my money. 30 years of my youth. I served this house like a dog. I deserve my share." I looked at him from above, feeling disgust rise to my throat. "You talk about investment?" I asked with an icy voice. "Fine, let's talk in your language." I raised 3 fingers. "Your costs. Falsehood, deception, and killing my daughter's soul. Your expected profit. $4 million. Your reality. A unilateral divorce lawsuit and legal costs." I crouched, looking him straight in the face. "Your return on investment is 0, Richard. 0. Richard tried to cling to the hem of my pants. "Give me a chance. I'm going to change. I will take care of you." I kicked to shake off his hand. "Lucy," I ordered, "open the door." Lucy, who had remained silent like a statue of justice, walked fast and opened the room door wide. The hallway outside was deserted. Only the wind blowing was heard. "Get out of here." I pointed to the exit. "Right now." "But Emily?" He turned to look at the bed. "She still has not—" "Do not dirty the air she breathes," I roared, losing my calm for the first time. "You do not deserve to see her face one last time. You do not deserve to hold her hand when she takes her last breath. You are just a parasite, and the host has already died." "Security?" I shouted loud, shouted. 2 burly guards whom I had hired since the morning appeared at the door. "Get this guy out. If he dares to return within 100 yards, call the police and hand them this tape with charges of privacy violation and attempted fraud." Richard looked at the guards, then at me, then at the will on the table. He knew he had lost everything. He got up, tie misaligned. He tried to rescue a little final dignity, throwing me a look full of hatred. "You will regret it, old man. You will die alone." "Could be," I replied calmly. "But I will die with my head held high. And you will live the rest of your life tormented by having let $10 million escape. That is your life sentence." Richard walked stumbling out of the room. His steps were no longer sure and arrogant like when entering. They were the steps of a bankrupt man. The door closed. Boom. The room recovered its original tranquility, a sacred tranquility. 5 in the afternoon. The afternoon sun projected long orange stripes on the white sheets. Emily left gently like a falling leaf. There were no sobs. There was no painful struggle. Just a long sigh. And then her chest stopped moving. I took her hand. Lucy was by my side, praying quietly. "Go in peace, daughter," I whispered, kissing her forehead. Her forehead was starting to get cold, but her face had a strange peace. There was no longer a trace of resigned sadness. She had been liberated. The funeral was 2 days later. Many people attended. Business partners, friends, relatives. Richard was not present. He tried to file a lawsuit in court the next day to ask for asset freezing, but Frank had presented the tape and the will video beforehand. The judge, an old friend of mine, dismissed his lawsuit upon entry for lack of grounds and signs of fraud. I heard Richard was abandoned by his mistress. As soon as she knew he was left with nothing and lost the 10 million opportunity, she left him without mercy to go after another real estate tycoon. The hunter became the prey of creditors, since he had asked for quick loans to spend in advance, sure he would inherit the fortune. 3 months later, I was standing in front of Emily's grave. The grave was on a small hill overlooking the city. The wind blew hard, messing my gray hair. Next to me was Frank. We had just inaugurated the Emily Miller Child Protection Center. The money from the sale of the first 10 acres of the swampland was enough to build a decent school and give scholarships to 500 children. "You did well, William," Frank patted me on the shoulder. "Emily is surely smiling." "I do not do this to atone for guilt," I said, looking at the tombstone with my daughter's name. "I do this to prove to Richard. Money only has value when put in the hands of people with heart." I took a small notebook out of my jacket pocket. The black leather notebook Richard used to write down his investments he had forgotten in the study. I lit a match and set it on fire. The flames grew, devouring the meticulously calculated numbers, the dirty plans. The ashes flew with the wind, vanishing into nothingness. I turned around and walked back straight and stepped firm. I am 70 years old. I am alone, but I am not defeated. I am still William, the man who built an empire with his own hands and protected it until the last breath. Upon reaching the cemetery gate, I turned one last time. The final investment was his. I murmured the last phrase for my ex-son-in-law. But the dividend, Richard, was mine. That dividend was not money. If this story captivated you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box to the left of the screen. Thanks for watching.